Welcome to another edition of the Radio Coffee House Show, where Jesus meets coffee meets talk radio. And the next one starts right now. Hey, what's up? It's Clint Armitage with the Radio Coffee House Show. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for tuning in, especially if you're listening to us at 93.3 FM in the Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, Nevada area. We appreciate you because we are recording at Glory Cloud Coffee Roasters located at 10 Greg Street, suite number 122 in Sparks, Nevada. So again, 93.3 FM. It's called K-Book. Tune in every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Also, you can find us online, radiocoffeehouse.com. That's where you can find us 24 hours a day. And then if you listen on a podcast platform, just search Radio Coffee House and you'll get us there. Okay, so we have a great show for you today. We've got a lady by the name of Allison McBride. She's coming in to talk about miracles and the prayers for miracles, because miracles happen and are produced by God through prayer. So let's listen up. Again, this episode is called The Miracle of Prayer, and we have a great lady in the studio today, and I'm so happy that she's here. Her name is Allison McBride. She has had a prayer ministry and a healing ministry where God has shown up and done some amazing things, like miracles, like healing cancer, healing this and healing that. Well, she's going to give us a few stories that she's been involved with and her own experience in her life, because she has suffered through a few things. So I'm so happy to have her here today. Allison, thanks for coming and sharing your story with us.
Hi, Clint. Thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure. I'm really enjoying getting a chance to share today.
Oh, no problem, Allison. We want to thank you for coming out to the studio and telling us about your stories and the stories of others that you've experienced. Now, I want to start off with hearing about you and how God has touched you, your life, your prayer life, and how this all came about. Sound good?
Sounds good. I've been walking with the Lord for a long time. I'm 71, so I'm not a spring chicken. I'm a mom, a wife, and a grandma, and I love my family very much. They're very important to me. And most of the things that I've learned about God and in healing have come from the walk of a family. My mom was a smoker, and she had COPD, and my dad had prostate cancer, and the two of them went through long journeys of healing in their lives. And it affected me and all of the kids in my family very much, because we wanted to see them live in the fullness of goodness that God has for us. So back in the late 1990s, I began working with some other people in the healing ministry and prayer, and it took all forms. We dealt with spiritual, mental, emotional, physical healings. We learned as we grew with God, and we loved what we were seeing. We were also sad because there's so many things that people do that make their lives worse. And we began to interact with them in ways that would build us all up.
Okay. So it sounds like it was more than just, Christians praying for other people. It sounds like it was a true formal ministry of prayer. And it's, I'm assuming that God just showed up in big ways, like miraculous ways. So I kind of want to hear about that. I want to hear how God showed up and what kind of issues you were dealing with.
Some of the issues were very obvious, because they would be things like cancer, diabetes, many kinds of mental illness, things like injuries that didn't heal correctly, generational sicknesses and illnesses. And then there was just the daily walk of struggle that people go through. In my own case, my family had lots of things going on with our adult children, or growing to be adult children, and I wanted to know more about how to reach the people that were hurting in a way that connected. Didn't just give them some sort of a patterned prayer that we saw in a book, but actually connect with the people so that we could help them connect with God directly. And so I began asking the Lord, how could I know Him better so that I could help others to know Him better? And He talked to me about our busy life, because it was very busy. We had 3 kids, we had cattle and horses. I had a full-time job. My husband had a full-time job. My kids were very active in things. So our life was very busy, but we needed to have more time that we could set aside just for the Lord. When you go to church on Sunday, it's a great experience. I would never downplay that in our lives as far as coaching and connection, but it's not intimacy, one-on-one with God, where you need to know who He is and how He loves us. So I began going to my church alone for an hour every day of the work days before work. I asked the pastor if I could have a key to the sanctuary. I went in the sanctuary and I sat alone with the Lord and I started praying and asking him, talk to me. Talk to me more than even what the Bible says. I know that Holy Spirit speaks today and he's very current with what he gives us. So I want to connect with that, and that's why I went. So I went and did that for 9 months prior to work, and I was amazed at the reactions that I saw around me. It affected me more than I realized. I was feeling more at peace with myself as I was moving into work days, when I was dealing with my children, as I was confronting problems with my family. I read the scriptures and they were very helpful, but I needed to hear from Holy Spirit directly. And so as I pursued this walk with him on a 9-month basis and went into that sanctuary, there were times where I just kept getting stuck in rote prayers, and I realized I needed to just stop praying and just be with him, quiet. And after about 8 months, an unusual thing happened to me. I was sitting in the sanctuary and I heard the door open to the back of the sanctuary and I heard footsteps come in. And I was sitting and I was just contemplating how it was that Jesus loved me and loved my family and loved the people around me that were important to me. And I knew that he wanted to make that known to me. And I had this feeling like you do when you know someone has entered into the room, that I needed to turn around and look, but I just waited and I sat there. And it felt like there was many people that walked into the room. I'd say at least 50. And I thought, oh boy, I'm not supposed to be in here. What's going on? What should I do? And after probably about 15 minutes, I opened my eyes and there was no one there, no one that I could see, but I knew that the Lord was there. And he was bringing me something. He was bringing me the ability to receive his love personally, one-on-one. And in receiving that, in holding that, in nurturing that he cares so much about each of us, all the hairs on our head, that I could then go forward and I could impact more as I lived my life out and was involved with the prayer ministry. I moved from that into many healing sessions with people, and I enjoyed that thoroughly because people were touched. I got to see them be touched by God personally if they would just believe that he was there and he cared for them. And it wasn't hard because he was there very clearly. In one instance, I saw a woman who had been struggling with cancer for quite a long period of time. She had been diagnosed as being terminal with mesothelioma, and she only had about a year to live. But she had a son that she desperately cared about and wanted to spend more time with him. And so in this pursuit of how God would work with us, we had begun to realize that healing is a process. It's not something necessarily that happens all at once. Even if you receive a miracle all at once, there's a process of what we do with it in our heart. And so as we contemplated what it was that God wanted to do to touch her, he knew how much she was hurting, how scared she was, what was going to have to happen. So we kept praying over a period of a few days. Different times we would contact each other and we would connect with what it was that we thought that God was saying. And the doctors came forth and they said, we do have a certain kind of surgery now that we can go in and we'll break open your chest cavity and we will scrape out the white mesothelioma cancer that's in there, and it will give you an extra year to live. And she was willing to go for that. So we began praying that she would be prepared, that it would be a good thing. One of the things we found as we started to interview her and talk to her about the various things going on in her life was that things that are happening around us influence our ability to heal. And one of those is just plain the confidence that God does love us. She had been told by doctors that she had the cancer gene, and that is something that was hanging up inside of her, that she was thinking, there's no way I can overcome this because I've got this cancer gene. I was born with it. I have no choice about it, and therefore I am stuck. And so we began praying and asking God, is this what you really want for her? And she realized that was not what he wanted for her, and she asked him to take it from her and to release her from the fear of everything that was happening and where she was possibly going. So we prepared for the surgery, and I went with her husband to the hospital. We waited. She went through the surgery. The doctor came out and said, I don't know what happened, but we opened her and there was nothing there. It was gone. I find this very moving because that was something that was a death sentence. And God said, no, not going to happen. And that woman was able to take that faith and that love of God and go forward and bless her son and realize what a valuable person she is. Lots of times we don't see that in ourselves. Another time with my mom, she had the COPD I mentioned earlier, and she had gone to the hospital as things were shutting down. COPD affects your ability to breathe, and she was having a lack of elasticity in her lungs, so she could not breathe normally. They had to put her on a ventilator, and the doctor, who had become a friend after many years of treatment, said there is probably no way we're going to be able to take her off of this machine. So I want you to prepare your family that they can say goodbye to her, and we will do the best we can, go as long as we can. My dad and I both said, no, we're not accepting this. It's not her time. I just know that it's not her time. And so we talked to him about a little, wasn't there anything more that they could do? And I need to introduce at this point the thought that we value what doctors say and how they contribute to our lives, because it's something that's been given to them as a gift from God. It's an important part of our thinking and our giftings. And so we trusted in this man that he knew and would do everything that he could. And he turned to us and he said, you know, it's pretty rare, but occasionally I ask my wife to pray in situations like this, and there is times that God would come and do something different. So I would encourage you to take that risk. So we did, and we prayed, and then we went to the hospital to say goodbye to her, and they took her off the machine, and she started breathing. She lived another 5 years, and that was a very positive thing. My own father was told that he would die of cancer in 5 years, and he said, no, I appreciate your doctors. I'm going to do what you tell me to do, but there is a bigger God. There's a bigger Jesus that can overcome the things that are going on in my body. And I want to agree with what he says about my body, that I can be whole and have divine health. And so he began praying and then taking care of himself physically, because God does give us a lot of choices in these things. And when I mentioned before that healing is a process, it's important to understand that we don't just sit back and say, okay, you know, you're like the fairy godmother now, Father, just do it. We have a part in what he's doing as well. We have a part in believing Jesus. We have a part in taking care of our bodies. We have a part in loving other people, forgiving and letting go of things. That is one of the interesting things that I learned about the healing ministry, was that emotions and unforgiveness contribute dramatically to sickness, coming active in our body, staying active in our body, and possibly even eventually killing us. And so it is important for us to get our hearts right, to bring our spirits in alignment with God so that he can change what's going on inside of us. The last story I want to share with you is a little controversial, but it's one that I think was very impacting for me. There was a woman that came to our rooms. The healing rooms is what we were, for a long period of time, probably almost a year. And she was addicted to marijuana. I don't care what people say as far as whether that's possible or not. She was emotionally, mentally, and to some degree physically addicted to it. And she could not stop it. And so she wanted to have some sort of magic thing done to her that was going to break this addiction, and she didn't know how to align with it. So she came for a long period of time and nothing happened, and she gave up and left. 10 years later, she came back. And this time I got her again, and we began walking through a multiple week time of prayer and talk and sharing over the things that were going on in her life surrounding the marijuana, not just the marijuana, but all the rest of it. And it became clear to me that she did not believe that Jesus loved her. She believed that she was a shameful, bad person because she did this thing. She smoked this marijuana and she shouldn't. It was not legal then. And that it was going to alienate her, and there was no way for her prayers to be heard because of this. And so we began the process of dismantling that lie and coming to the reality that God loved her no matter what. And as crazy as it sounds, she started inviting Jesus to come be with her when she started smoking in the evenings. And he did. He came and he sat with her and he loved her. And within 3 weeks period of time, she didn't need the marijuana anymore and she stopped. It was done. So I want to just emphasize that process is very important. There's something that we need to do to cooperate with whatever it is that he's showing us and how we go along through this process.
All right. Well, first off, thanks for those wonderful stories. I mean, that's so cool how, God was doing things through those stories there. Now, I want to talk about something that kind of came to my mind. I want to unpack this thing called process. And I know there's thinking out there that if it doesn't happen instantaneously, then God's not in it. And so I kind of want to talk about that. Let's look at and let's talk about to see if it's wrong thinking to believe that all miracles come instantly and that God answers prayers instantly all the time. So can you unpack a little bit of that?
If you stop to think about acquiring any skill, any kind of activity in your life, when you're a child and your mom puts a spoon in your hand the first time, you want to get that food in your mouth. And so you're going to put your fingers in there as much as your spoon. And then sooner or later, you learn how to put the spoon in there and you eat like adults, rather than just like children. That's a process of learning to cooperate with what's going to be the best way to do it. And it's like that with healing in terms of we have the ability to choose each of the decisions that we make. If we put a expectation upon God rather than a desire to be close to him, we're probably missing the boat. He cares about our feelings and he wants us to be free from the fear and he wants us to enter into this. He does sometimes bring an instantaneous thing, but I have actually seen people be healed of cancer and it comes right back because they do not take it as a process. They just take the gift for granted and they go on with life and that's that. They didn't realize what it was that happened, where the Lord actually came and brought something into their body. When the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years touched Jesus' garment, she never touched Jesus. She didn't expect him to acknowledge her. She didn't hope for some sort of a magic touch. She just felt, this is the Son of God and he loves me. And if I can just get close to him, there can be something that might impact where I am. She was happy with just that. She lowered the expectations and increased her expectancy that he is good, he will have love available, and I can connect with that love. She did it, and she was healed instantly. Sometimes it takes longer. The place of where we are in our mind and how we face our troubles is what I'm talking about. If we believe a bunch of lies, A, about ourselves and B, about God, those things get in the way of us interacting with him. We won't be able to hear him. We won't be able to process him. So as he's giving us this gift, we are grateful and we move with it slowly and we take it as he gives it to us.
Okay. So kind of what I'm getting, and again, correct me if I'm wrong or expand on this idea, but what it sounds like to me is that we shouldn't be focusing on the externals. We shouldn't be focusing on the statistics. We shouldn't be focusing on the new treatment or how good or bad our disease is or how good or bad the situation looks because it may look grim. It sounds like we should be focusing on desiring God, getting close to God, the proximity of God, and leaving the outcome to him.
Absolutely. I had cancer in my eyes twice. And both times it was quite a struggle because I was in that mental place of worrying about the statistics, worrying about how much the doctor said was going to happen here, not understanding, afraid, very unsure, feeling unworthy that he would touch me. We're looking at all those externals, just like you said. But when I finally gave up, laid it down and said, okay, this is it. I know you love me, and I'm just going to let you touch me in whatever way is your best will. And I'll take today's portion of your best will. And tomorrow I will take tomorrow's portion of your best will. And I will know that you love me and care about me. And all other thoughts, get out of here. I don't have time for you. I ended up in a partnership with the doctors, and I had successful surgery the first time. After it was done and the tumors were taken out, the doctor then checked me out a couple months later, and he said, "Oh, okay, I think we're all right here, but did I do the chemotherapy and the freezing of your eyeball?" And the answer was, no, he didn't. I don't know why he didn't do it, but he didn't do it after the surgery. And right away, what did I feel? Fear. Oh my gosh, it's going to come back. It's going to be the same thing. It'll be worse, and I'm going to go blind. That's what they were saying. And I realized, who's talking to me? This is not God. And so I needed to tell that voice, shut up. I am not listening to you. I am trusting that if God got me this far, He's got the provision that I need. A year later, I got it in the other eye. And it was completely surprising to everybody. They said it was about 1 in a billion chances. I went through the process all over again, but this time I knew this isn't about what they say. This isn't about what the tests show. This is about my relationship with Him and how He's going to love me no matter what. And I did get to the place where I realized that if I indeed went blind, He was still going to take care of me. He was still going to be there in my life every day, and my needs were going to be met. That place of submission is so freeing. If we can come to that and give up and trust, that is when healing can begin in ways otherwise it might be held off.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk about like the spirit, human spirit, because we kind of have a spirit of rebellion, right? We have this thing like I can do, but it sounds like with these miracles that there's a sense of surrendering before the miracles happen. It appears as if we have to come to a place, and this doesn't only, happen in believers' lives, it's also happening in unbelievers' lives, where when we're hitting rock bottom, we're getting to a place where we actually surrender and give it up. Then stuff happens, like change happens. Is that what you kind of think?
Absolutely. In the woman with the marijuana, she surrendered. She said, I can't stop this. I can't get away from it. But she did stop long enough to receive His love, and then she could follow through, and it was healing for her that His love came in and replaced the need for the drug. Same thing for my mom when she was coming off of the machine. We surrendered her. We said, Lord, if this is really what you want, if you really want to take her home, it's her time, then we surrender her with your love because we trust you. You have the best for her, and we know that you know more than we do. We took her off the ventilator, and she started breathing again. Each time that we've had contact with a healing experience, there is an element of surrender to it. And that is not so easy for us to do in this day and age, because we are very much wanting to be in control of our lives. But are we? Not really. The circumstances all around us control us an awful lot. And what we can do is just stay in that place of partnership.
Okay. So, I'm loving everything that you're talking about here. And, we talked a little bit about surrendering, and that sounds like the first thing we need to do is surrender to God to allow God to come in. But then it also sounds like we shouldn't be putting an expectation on God to do a certain thing. Because you know how we kind of think like we expect God to do it a certain way and to do it in our time and to do it exactly the way that we want Him to do it. And if He doesn't, then we get a little frustrated, or then we get mad, or then we, throw our hands up at God and we start, not believing His word. But it sounds like there should be like an air of expectancy, but not expectation on God. The expectancy, I think, would come from like just knowing that God loves us and He's going to do the best for us. So no matter what happens, no matter the outcome, we can expect God to do something for us, right?
And He talks to us more and more as we do that too. His voice gets clearer, and we understand better, and we can get impressions about things that otherwise we would not be able to because our expectations are in the way. I expect Him to do it this way, through that doctor, through that operation, through that medication, through that exercise, that diet, whatever it is that we're pursuing, that relationship. Okay, we're going to go to the counselor, so it's going to be all fine. No, No, it's about us listening to what he has for us. And if he's going to partner with us in those things, lots of good stuff can come.
Okay, so we're going to stop it right there, and that'll be this episode of part 1, The Miracle of Prayer. So make sure to come back next time, and we're going to hear part 2 and hear the rest of the back and forth between me and Allison. See you next time. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Radio Coffee House Show, where we're all about Jesus, coffee, and radio. We'll see you next time.